All right, it's time to turn this Fox block into this board and batten siding and make this house look like somebody cares. We're out at the front of the house or maybe the back of the house, depending on the way you look at it. We have sided this. This is a wooden structure. It's a zip system board, which is a coated OSB. It has its own vapor barrier. And the board and batten goes directly onto that. But now we're transitioning from that onto the Fox block structure. So we've contacted Fox block. We've gotten a lot of material on how to do this. And one of the issues is, although you have studs every 8 inches, and we're doing board and batten with boards that are 8 inches, you may get slightly off. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to put furring strips on there that will go this way. They will go perpendicular to the studs. But I don't want the wall to stand out too much off of the Fox block. And so we have a tool here that actually trenches the styrofoam down to the stud. This is the stud that's inside there. And this tool actually trenches the styrofoam out. Now, I spent a long time looking for one of these because the original cost I saw was about $500. But there's a cheaper version on Amazon, and we're going to see if it works, because I saw somebody that did it to cut their outlet boxes and do some wire runs in their house on a Fox block structure. So I've done a little testing here. It seems to work, but what I've had to do is, because that's only 5/8 of an inch into the styrofoam, I have to plane these down so that I get a little bit more flush fitting there. And I've already done that with some boards in the barn. So let's start trenching and see how it works.
You can see I have some assistance from one of the kittens we recently rescued from the side of the road. I wanted to start down low because I figured that would be the easiest one to do, and I knew there would be a learning curve. I was really glad I did that.
I have finished my first 10 feet, and it's definitely a slow process. And I found that this actually began to bend a little bit. I did read online that that can happen. So you have to go really slow and not put a lot of pressure on this, because when it heats up, obviously it gets soft. So I think I've got the technique down. As you can see, it exposes all of these studs that are in the wall, and that's what the furring strip is going to be attached to. I think this is going to take a while, probably a couple of hours, because you have to take your time. But I'm real happy with the nice, even trench that it makes, and I'm looking forward to getting the furring strips up on there.
I was able to use the seam on the Fox block as a guide to keep the trench straight. I was also able to equally space the trenches by using the vertical displacement of the Fox block. That's what I really like about this system. You always have vertical and horizontal references that are perfectly level and perfectly plumb. While I was doing this, I had my son in the barn planing down the boards and getting ready to fit the first one.
We've got the first strip in, and it's working well. I wanted to throw this in real quick to make sure that my plan was going to work before I did all this trenching, in case I needed to make changes, but I really like it. This is planed down to 3/4 of an inch. I have a 5/8 inch trench, so I have an 1/8 inch reveal. That'll provide just a slight bit of airflow behind the wood. It is wood siding. Now, what we're looking at right here is one of the seams that I talked about in a previous video when you're building the ICF house. We lined up these seams in order to establish the course sequence from course to course, and that's explained in the previous video, so I won't go over that. But what that does is it offsets the actual studs here, so this spacing between this stud and this stud is not exactly 8 inches. And that's why this is essential, because when you hit these seams, if you have 8-inch boards, they line up all the way until you get to a seam, then they don't line up, and you've got to do something else. So we're not even going to worry about those studs. We're going to go right into these strips.
You can see in this video that I went up 2 horizontal seams to do the next trench. Again, I wanted to stay on the lower trenches to get a little bit better at this before I actually got on a ladder and tried it up there. The instructions said to set the temperature so that it melts the styrofoam without burning it. In other words, you shouldn't have any smoke. This is near the maximum setting, but it was just perfect. No smoke at all, went through at a nice pace, and this is real-time video. You'll notice also that there's a block of wood I'm using to actually push the front. That was to keep the platform flat against the styrofoam because that portion is somewhat hot. And lastly, you may notice a little bit of blood on the back of my hand because the top of those bars are pretty sharp, and I figured that out pretty quick. The heat is applied by pressing a trigger switch there under my index finger on the left hand. If you let that go, the heat stops. I would only do a couple feet of trenching at a time because I wanted to check to make sure the depth was correct and consistent. As you see here, as I let off the heat and pull the styrofoam away, some of those studs are not revealed, meaning that I didn't have good depth. So I had to kind of go over that again. It took me about an hour and about 40 feet of trenching before I felt really confident with the equipment. After that, the last portion of the wall went extremely fast, relatively, of course. While I was busy trenching, my son was in the barn planing down these boards to 3/4 of an inch. He did about 160 linear feet and then came out and helped me put them in, so the whole project went relatively quick.
I've now completed most of this wall, about 90% of it. I have 2 more spots to finish up. But Danielle can start putting the board and batten down here while I finish that part up. I'm really happy with the tool that I used. I'm really happy with the spacing and the layout of this wall. I think it's going to work really well.
There's a whole lot of processing that goes on when it comes to wood siding. First the tree comes down, then you cut it on the mill, you dry it, then you see the kids here in the workshop cutting them to size, planing them down, and getting them ready to put on the wall. So it's nice to have a good team like we've got here. The kids have done an excellent job in this little workshop that we have here. We now have planks for the board. We have some battens cut, and these are all planed. We've got some trim pieces here for around the windows, and we're now working on the long trim pieces for the top. So there's around 63 of these boards ready to go. It's going to cover roughly about 40 feet of the wall, so we need to get to work.
The exciting part that I've been waiting for, let's get a wall up. Having the boards all planed, ready, and sitting waiting was key to making this a very simple process. I was able to simply grab the boards and pop them up, and then Sean helped me put up the trim and do some of the higher nails. So we knew at some point the wood siding was going to kind of run into the ground level slope that was there. So after we finished the first section, forgot to video it, but Sean and Aiden, my son, came in and they brought that ground level down up here to make less of a slope. Moved probably about 3 tons, 4 tons of dirt here. Just brought that hillside out. Now we're down to that water barrier that's there against the ICF, and he's got to finish that final bottom trench there. But I'm just going to kind of keep plugging along on planks. I've got to clean some of this soil off just to make sure we don't trap all that muck behind the wood. But it's coming along slowly but surely. So I've reached a stopping point on my wall. Everybody else has left the house to go do some things, and I'm here alone, and I cannot do the next step by myself. So I'm going to move on to the next plan, and this is one of those things I do not recommend you do. You can see behind me here, I got a load of plants on the 50% off sale at our local store. I've been waiting on that all year so I could actually start doing some landscaping around here, and I could not pass up the opportunity. This saved me hundreds of dollars because I got everything really, really discounted. The problem is we're totally not ready for it. But these things are root bound. They're really struggling to survive at this point. So I'm gonna go ahead and just start putting them in the ground over there where we're working on the wall. Fortunately, there's large gaps between the plantings, so yeah, we'll see how it works. But ideally, you would definitely have the wall finished before you put the plants in. After measuring out my garden design, I decided to not plant the back row to leave us a little more space. We still have a bit of work to do on that lower section of wall, as we're going to be installing a cement board on the foundation area where it contacts the soil. But at least I was able to get about half my plants in and keep them from drying out, make them a little happier, and we'll still have some room to work. After they returned from their errands, Aiden and I got back to work installing the battens on the final section of wall. This was really exciting to see it all coming together. Well, looks like that is it for now. We have reached a stopping point where we cannot go any further. Essentially, we've run out of the properly sized wood, so Sean is going to have to get back on the lumber mill once again. That's been a big challenge for us, trying to keep the right sizes in. I do have another section of the house I may start working on, but you know, it's exciting for now to actually have something that looks like someone lives here. So that's an encouraging part of the progress, I guess. But that's it for this week. Thanks for watching, and be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the stuff that's coming up soon. And make sure you leave us a comment. We'd love to hear what your projects are this summer.